Hi, I'm Marty Nemko. Here are sample scripts for 7 ticklish situations that are commonly encountered in one's work life. Of course, you're not going to want to spout a script verbatim. Unless you're a good actor, you're going to come off stilted. And a more important reason to not memorize a spiel is that you're going to want to say what's appropriate to your style of communication and who you're speaking with. So adapt or scrap these scripts as you see fit. I'm going to call out principles of communication that are embedded in the script, and I do that only the first time that I'm demonstrating a principle. The first scenario is when you've been criticized. You might start with, I appreciate your candor. See, everybody likes praise, especially if it's earned, but sometimes if it's not. And you might continue with, so you start with, I appreciate your candor. Is there more you want to explain about this? That enables you to get more information and to buy time to calm down. If you decide you want to improve based on what was, the criticism, you might say something like, well, I'd like to try to improve by blah, and kind of insert what you would do, and then end with, what do you think? You see, J.W. Marriott said that the 4 most powerful words in the English language are, what do you think? So you might consider capstoning your suggestion of any sort that you're making to somebody with that. If you're feeling defensive and aren't sure whether you're right to argue back, you might say, that's a lot to take in. Would you mind if I reflect on this and get back to you tomorrow? Now, if you're sure the person's wrong or that there are extenuating circumstances, you might say, I can understand why you might think that. If I were in your shoes, I might feel the same way. But and then you can insert your explanation and then again end with, what do you think? The principle here is to legitimate the other person's position before you offer an alternative by saying, I can understand why you might think that. If I were in your shoes, I might feel the same way. The next scenario is confronting a problem employee or someone who's working at your home, a service person or whatever. You might start with, I'm concerned about your work. Maybe it's its quality or its timeliness. And then give a brief example of why you're concerned. And then continue with, so you start with, I'm concerned about your work. Is there something I'm not understanding? The principle there is that is brevity. Shakespeare said brevity is the soul of wit, and I would add that brevity is also the soul of persuasiveness. The longer your pitch, the more of an interaction's energy comes from you, not the other person. That tends to lessen the other person's investment in what you're proposing. Then listen well, being open to the possibility that there are extenuating circumstances for the bad behavior, or it's a one-time problem, or that you having brought it up is going to result in sufficient improvement. But if you don't think that, ask, so where do you think we should go from here? And the principle in saying that is, asking the criticized person to propose a solution is more likely to get the person invested in improving. And only if a decent suggestion for improvement is not forthcoming from the person, then you probably can suggest or even mandate one. If you believe there's a decent chance the person's suggestion will result in significant improvement, you can say something like, fair enough, let's chat in a couple of days to see how things are going. And also note the tone that's not angry if you can control it. But if you're not sufficiently convinced that the person's plan is going to work well enough, you might say something like, how about you do X and we'll check back with each other in a couple of days. That way you're being prescriptive without seeming authoritarian. The next scenario is asking for the sale, and I'm using the term sale broadly. Because the text version of this is in Psychology Today, I'm going to create an example of a counselor who would like a prospective client to make an appointment. You might start by saying, so in light of what you've said, you, the prospective client, and you might paraphrase what the prospective client said. You then continue to say, so in light of what you've said, I think I could be of help. We would likely first do X and then Y, and within about X sessions, 10 sessions or whatever, I'd hope that you would, and then you would insert some likely improvement you think likely the person to have. And then you say something like, I have an opening this Tuesday at 11 a.m. and one on Wednesday at 6 p.m. will either work for you. And the principle there is if you're proposing a solution, consider offering 2 choices, both of which are acceptable to you. The next scenario is asking for a raise or a promotion. Timing matters. The best time to ask for a raise is when you've just been praised by your boss, and ideally when your work group or the overall organization is doing well financially. And at that point, you might say something like, thank you for the kind words. Of course, no good deed goes unpunished. The principle there is if you use it judiciously, humor can leaven a stressful situation. You might continue. So you start with saying, thanks for the kind words. Of course, no good deed goes unpunished. But perhaps this is a good time for me to ask for my raise. I've listed my accomplishments and projections for what I could do in the coming months. What do you think? The next scenario is a job seeker cold contacting a target employer. So you'd like to work for a particular employer, but no appropriate jobs advertised, so you decide to leave voicemail for a person who potentially could hire you. You might say something like this. They say it's important in life to ask for what you want, so forgive me for doing so here. The principle there is, yeah, ask for what you need and maybe want, but it's appropriate to soften the ask with such words as, forgive me for asking, or I'm wondering whether, or what do you think of the idea, or even I'm feeling a little sheepish asking for this, but. So then you might continue by saying, I'm a successful, whatever, insert your line of work, and I'm looking for my next opportunity. As I reflected on where I'd fit best and make the best contribution, working for you and then you insert your role, as an accountant, HR person, whatever. Working for you rose to the top, and here is why. And you explain it in just a sentence or two. Of course, I looked for such a position on your website, but found none. But perhaps it's worth our chatting briefly to see if there is a fit and if I can be of help to you. My phone number is X and my email is Y. Thanks for considering it. Next scenario is when you have the skills but not the education required for the job. You might say something like, I was tempted to not apply for the job because I don't meet the education requirement, but I like to think I have real-world experience and learnings that may end up being of greater value to you. And you insert 3 good examples, maybe even better, attach a document that lays out what you've done and your major learnings. And then end with those famous 4 words, those powerful 4 words, what do you think? And the final scenario is that I want to discuss with you is answering a job interview question about a gap in employment. Of course, it might be nice if you could honestly say, well, as a person in demand, I have the luxury of holding out for a very well-suited position. Unfortunately, that often is not the case, so here's what you might say in the more typical situation. I wish I could say that as a zillionaire I took time off to sail the world, or that I'm in such demand that I can be extraordinarily picky, but neither is the case. And that's, again, preempting. The principle there is you're preempting an objection. If you suspect that the person's first reaction to your proposal is going to be negative, you might want to preempt it. For example, I can understand why you would think X, but, and then you insert your position. And here's how the person might continue. So this is the pitch for somebody who doesn't meet the education requirements. Well, I believe I'm a solid employee, reliable, ethical, reasonably intelligent. I'm not unique in that. Especially in our COVID-decimated job market, I continue to look for employment that both the employer and I feel good about. I'm pleased that you called me in for an interview, and I look forward to exploring whether we are a match. So those are my thoughts. Hopefully you'll find some communication strategies or even phraseology that you might find of value. In any event, I do thank you for watching. I'm Marty Nemko. I welcome your thumbs up and accept your thumbs down. I always look forward to your comments, and I especially like it if you hit the share button below and share on your social media so that my efforts can have broader impact. I am flattered if you choose to subscribe to my channel, and in any event, I do thank you for watching. I am Marty Nemko.